Hello, my name's Rhiannon. I'm a writer and book blogger. Today we're going to India and I'm going to talk about a new debut novel called A Burning by a young Indian novelist, Megha Majumdar. I came across this book via algorithms. I've just finished the young Chinese writer Anne Yu's novel, Braised Pork. I reviewed it a couple of months ago. So I think the computer algorithm thought I was interested in books by young authors who were from abroad, to put it frankly. Anyway, I brought the book and I really enjoyed it. Megha Majumdar and Anne Yu have probably never met, and their two books are very, very different in style and tone. But what impressed me about both these novels is that we have one young Indian lady and one young Chinese lady who are very bravely trying to write about their countries, India and China, which are undergoing huge change and have many issues to face. In India we have a right-wing government and some would say a failing democracy. In China, under Xi Jinping, we have a very authoritarian government. So the two women are trying to deal with that in their own ways, and I take my hats off to them both. So the plot, the storyline of A Burning. It begins with a young Muslim girl, Jivan, who's a shop girl. She works in a shop and she's got her day off and she's at home and she's enjoying relaxing with her new mobile phone that she's very proud to have bought with her own money. Now she's scrolling through Facebook. She lives in the Kolkata slum in Calcutta in West Bengal. Now on that particular day there has been a terrorist, we are told anyway, a terrorist attack on a train at her local station. It's been firebombed basically, and people have been burnt alive in carriages. The inference, though we are never given evidence for this, is that it is a sectarian attack by Muslims on Hindus. Now, there's a lot of history about this sort of thing in India, so it's not new. No, Jivan is scrolling through her Facebook page about the Kolkata train terrorist outrage. And she's feeling very empowered. She thinks that Facebook gives her a voice, and she makes a comment about it. Doesn't get any likes or gets 1 or 2 likes. And she sees other people getting 200-300 likes. So very stupidly, she makes a very ill-advised comment about perhaps the government being complicit in this attack. Now, the obvious happens is that she gets picked up for being involved in the terrorist attack. There's also some circumstantial evidence in that she happened to be in the Kolkata train station with a bag around the time of the terrorist attack. So here we have our story. A young, innocent shop girl who's Muslim, a minority in India, who's arrested for a terrorist attack. It's never quite clear what she's charged with, and by the end we see that really things are being said like, well, the public requires a scapegoat and she's being unpatriotic. So we have a plot line about emerging here. There are two people who have the power to potentially give evidence, provide alibis and exonerate her. Bear in mind that she's facing a potential death sentence. These two people are her former physical education teacher, PT sir, PT as in physical training. So this teacher is never given a name, he's just called PT sir. And he used to teach Jivan sport at school. Now this chap has got involved in right-wing Hindu politics, which he is finding very empowering. The other person who potentially has the power to provide evidence that might exonerate Jivan is Lovely, a hijra who lives in the same slum as Jivan. A hijra is a transvestite within Indian tradition, which also has lots of religious and traditional roles that you will see explained in the novel. So Jivan had been teaching Lovely English as an act of charity. Now, all these people, Jivan, PT Sir and Lovely, the Hijra, they all have their dreams. They are all poor. PT Sir is perhaps the best well off. I don't think he lives in the slum where the other two do. But they all have dreams and they want to better themselves. Now, Lovely, for example, wants to be a movie star and she's taking acting lessons. PT Sir is realising that he can get on through politics if he compromises in certain ways. And Jivan, she just wants to be an independent young woman, earn her own money, spend her own money and have a voice in society. So their dreams bind them together. Now the story arc is really what's going to happen. Are Lovely, the Hijra, and PT Sir, the teacher, going to step forward and save Jivan from potential execution? What I really enjoyed about this story was how compelling it was. Partly, I think, because the three voices, it's written from three different rotating points of view, PT Sir, Jivan and the Hijra. There's a couple of rogue points of view that I can't quite see what we'll put in, but essentially we've got 3 points of view and that worked very well in short chapters. The language was beautiful. It was very simple but very powerful, and the imagery was very, very well and carefully chosen. Some books, and I say some, from the Indian subcontinent to a modern British reader can come across as slightly outdated in language and slightly old-fashioned. This doesn't. It's a very modern story in a very modern language for a modern audience. Having said that, it's the kind of old-fashioned story that Charles Dickens would have recognised. It's a story of social activism. Majumdar clearly has a point to make about the rise of right-wing Hindu government in India, but she doesn't fall into the trap of letting that come first. She lets the characters tell the story, and through the characters and the slums and the petty corruption and the compromises that they have to make, the social injustice just screams off the page. So the book is extremely powerful. It really is a searing critique of what some would call a failing democracy. I've read lots of books about Calcutta and Bengal. It's been an quiet area of interest for some time. Some people will know me from my novel The Last VICEREINE, which is not set in Bengal, but it's set in India. Anyway, I've read all sorts of things. History, of course, Tagore. I've taken an interest in Bengali culture. Some of the books that make it in the West, modern books, are written by Bengalis, often from Kolkata, middle-class Bengalis, who've gone and lived abroad and then returned to Bengal, to Calcutta, to rediscover their roots. And there's a certain type of nostalgia in these books, and they tend to be written by educated middle-class Indians. And they're coming back and they're looking for what's been lost, and in a sense, a golden age of Calcutta and Bengali literature, art, politics. So that's a certain type of novel. This isn't like that at all, and I found it incredibly refreshing. And it really was the best book I've ever read about Bengal or Calcutta. And it was the most compelling. It was incredibly real. It was set in the slums. It described the way the system worked from the bottom up, in the sense that the petty corruptions, which you will see when you read the book, that blight people's lives. Some of the details were wonderful. For example, she talks about drinking tea from the little clay cups and how you have to hold the top so that you don't burn yourself on the hot clay on the bottom. She talks about frogs and toads sort of coming in from the garden into political meetings. She talks about how in Jeevan's first school, the teacher told them to stick a 5 rupee note on their exam paper and just write their name on the top, and that she would fill in the rest. She talks about the whole slum going up in cheers when the electricity comes back on, which is something I remember from my time in China in the 1980s. So it's full of details, and you really understand how people's lives work at that level. I've never seen that done effectively in English in a novel about Calcutta. I really enjoyed this book. I was completely hooked from the first chapter, and I read it in a couple of sittings. If I do have a critique, it would be around the character of Lovely, the Hijra. First of all, the voice that Megha Majumdar chose to write the Hijra's point of view was the present continuous in English. And I know why she did it, because she's trying to show the way that the Hijra would be thinking in Bengali. And I don't speak an indigenous Indian language, but my understanding is that they use the present tense a lot. So you will hear, I was thinking I would be going, that he was, you will recognise it. It's difficult for me to do. But my immediate reaction was that it didn't work, and that may be because of my age and the fact that I'm British. When I was a child, there was a lot of what we would call now, frankly, racist and politically and derogatory stuff in comedies, where Indian characters would appear speaking this kind of present tense pidgin English. So in my mind, it becomes associated a little bit with slapstick. Now, I thought quite a bit about the character of the Hijra, and I don't want to go into too much detail because it's a bit of a minefield. But she was very rounded and she was very real most of the time, very perceptive. And Majumdar uses her to make some quite perceptive comments about Indian society. She did at times just tiny tip over into the slapstick. I think on the whole she stayed on the right side of not being a comedy figure, not being slapstick, but there was a slight tendency to occasionally, I was wondering, not quite sure about that. Having said that, I really enjoyed the book. To finish off with, I would love to interview both Megha Majumdar and Annie Yu at the same time, both incredibly talented young women who are thinking about their own country and expressing themselves through art. And again, both of them very brave. And what's interesting about both of them is both of them lived and studied, and as far as I understand it, obtained degrees in America, in the USA. I would love to ask them how their foreign education, if you want, their American education and their period out of their own countries and culture enabled them to write these books. Was this period of exile essential to their creative process? Did it enable them to stand back and see their culture, their own society from a different perspective? Did they think that if they had stayed in their own countries, they would have been able to, or would have felt like writing the kind of books that they did? If you read A Burning, I'd love to know what you think, particularly if you come to it fresh and you're not really following contemporary Indian politics. I'd love to know what you make of it. The publisher is marketing it as a novel for all time, and that's applicable to all societies. I think in many ways it is, but I'd be interested to know what people made of it, if they went up to date with what's going on in contemporary India. So that's all for today. If you've got any comments, want to get in touch with me, put something in the little box below and I'll try and get back to you. And don't forget to subscribe if you'd like to receive more of this kind of book chat stuff. Thank you.